Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. Ice Cream and Insignias. Victor Wolf had seen combat in 3 countries, survived 2 IED blasts, and earned a chest full of ribbons most soldiers only dreamed about. But nothing in his 12 years of service prepared him for the sight of a 6-year-old girl sitting alone by Fort Bragg's East Gate, tears streaming down her face as the North Carolina sun beat down mercilessly. It was supposed to be a routine training day. Victor's unit, the 3rd Special Forces Group, was running live-fire exercises in the southern sector. He'd volunteered to grab supplies from the main depot, driving solo in a beat-up Humvee that had seen better decades. The girl appeared like a mirage in his peripheral vision. Pink dress, scraped knees, clutching a stuffed elephant like it was the last solid thing in her world. Victor pulled over without thinking. Combat had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, every fiber of his being screamed that this wasn't right. "Hey there," he said, crouching down at her level, careful to keep his distance. He knew how scary a 6'2" soldier in full BDUs could look to a kid. "You okay?" The girl hiccuped, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "I can't find my mommy." Victor glanced around. The gate was heavily monitored, but this section was technically outside the main security perimeter, a small parking area where families sometimes waited. No other adults in sight. His jaw tightened. What kind of parent loses track of their kid on a military base? "All right, what's your name?" "Summer," she whispered, hugging her elephant tighter. "Summer." Victor filed that away. "Well, Summer, I'm Victor. I'm going to help you find your mom, okay? But first," he pulled out his wallet. "Have you had lunch?" She shook her head. 20 minutes later, they sat outside the PX, Summer working through her second ice cream cone, while Victor made discreet inquiries. The base wasn't on lockdown, which meant this wasn't a security threat. Just a scared kid and probably a panicked parent. He called the MPs, but they were dealing with an incident at the airfield. Standard protocol said to wait, but Victor had always been better at breaking protocol than following it. "My mommy works in the big building," Summer offered between licks, chocolate smearing her chin. "The one with all the flags." Victor's eyes narrowed. The big building with flags. That was Headquarters Battalion, where colonels and generals shuffled papers and made decisions that sent men like him into hell. "Interesting. Does your mommy wear a uniform?" he asked carefully. Summer nodded enthusiastically. "Like yours, but with more shiny stuff." More shiny stuff. Officer territory. Victor felt a headache coming on. Losing a kid was bad enough. Losing an officer's kid was career suicide for whoever was supposed to be watching her. He pulled out his phone, took a photo of Summer with her elephant, and sent it to his buddy in the admin building with a simple message. "Kid lost near Eastgate. Mom works HQ Battalion. Female officer. Help." The response came back in 30 seconds. "Holy shit, Wolf. That's General Thomas's daughter. Stay put." Victor's blood went cold. Not just any officer. A general. He looked down at Summer, who was now using her stuffed elephant to create an elaborate story about ice cream kingdoms. Lieutenant General Diane Thomas. He'd never met her personally, but everyone knew the name. The Army's rising star, youngest 3-star in recent history, rumored to be on track for a 4th. She'd made her bones in intelligence operations, then transitioned to Special Operations Command. Word was she'd personally authorized 3 of the most successful raids in the past 5 years. And Victor had just bought her daughter ice cream while she was apparently missing. "Summer." A woman's voice cut through the afternoon heat like a blade, sharp, controlled, but with an undercurrent of barely contained panic. Victor stood as Diane Thomas rounded the corner at a pace just shy of running. She wore her ACUs with the precision of someone who'd never had a wrinkle in her life, 3 stars gleaming on her chest. But her face, that was pure mother, fear and relief warring across features that probably intimidated half the Pentagon. "Mommy." Summer launched herself forward, and Diane dropped to her knees, crushing her daughter against her chest. Victor stood at attention, feeling simultaneously like he'd done something heroic and something that would end his career. You didn't just casually hang out with a general's kid eating ice cream without permission forms in triplicate. Diane's eyes met his over Summer's head. You found her. She found me, ma'am. Near the east gate. The general's jaw tightened. Someone was going to pay for this security lapse, and Victor was glad it wouldn't be him. Diane stood, Summer perched on her hip, and extended her hand. Victor shook it. Firm grip, calluses that said she wasn't just a desk officer. Sergeant Wolf, she said, reading his name tape. What unit? 3rd Special Forces Group, ma'am. Alpha Company. Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition? Calculation? Hard to say. And you just happened to find my daughter? Wrong place, right time, ma'am. Victor kept his voice neutral. I was heading to depot. Saw her crying. Rest was just common sense and ice cream. A ghost of a smile crossed Diane's face. She does love ice cream. Then, more seriously, I owe you one, Sergeant. No debt, ma'am. Just glad she's safe. Diane studied him for a long moment, and Victor had the uncomfortable feeling of being assessed by someone who'd spent years evaluating assets and threats. Finally, she nodded. What's your unit number? Victor rattled it off, still not sure if this was going to end well or badly. Thank you again, Sergeant Wolf. Diane shifted Summer in her arms. I won't forget this. As she walked away, Victor watched them go, feeling like he'd just stepped onto a chessboard without knowing the rules. In his experience, generals didn't forget debts. The question was whether this would turn out to be a blessing or a curse. Chapter 2. The Briefing Room. 7 days later, Victor sat in a classified briefing room he didn't even know existed, staring at maps of places he'd never been deployed and wondering what the hell he'd done to deserve this. The summons had come through official channels, a sealed envelope hand-delivered by an aide who looked like he could kill you with a stapler. No explanation, just coordinates, a time, and a security clearance requirement that made Victor's current level look like a library card. Major Bradford Maxwell sat at the head of the conference table, all pressed uniforms and perfectly coiffed hair that probably cost more than Victor's monthly salary. Harvard ROTC pedigree, fast-tracked through every soft posting the Army offered, and currently serving as General Thomas's chief operations officer. Victor had done his homework after getting the summons. Maxwell was everything Victor wasn't: connected, political, and more comfortable in a suit than combat gear. Sergeant Wolf. Maxwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. Thank you for joining us. I understand you've met General Thomas. Briefly, sir. Yes. The ice cream incident. Maxwell's tone made it sound like Victor had been caught committing a federal offense. Quite the fortuitous encounter. The door opened before Victor could respond. Diane Thomas entered, and every soldier in the room snapped to attention. She waved them down, moving to the front of the room with the efficiency of someone who valued every second. At ease. Sergeant Wolf, you're probably wondering why you're here. The thought crossed my mind, ma'am. A flicker of amusement. I've been reviewing personnel files for a special assignment. Your name came up. Bradford Maxwell shifted almost imperceptibly, but Victor caught it. Interesting. Diane continued. We're establishing a new joint task force. Small team, highly specialized, focused on counterintelligence operations in Southeast Asia. I need operators who can think on their feet, adapt to changing circumstances, and, she paused meaningfully, make the right call when protocol doesn't apply. Victor's pulse quickened. This was the kind of assignment people killed for. Literally. Major Maxwell has been compiling a list of candidates, Diane said. I'm adding you to that list. Maxwell's jaw tightened microscopically. General, with respect, Sergeant Wolf's record shows excellent tactical performance, but this operation requires someone who helped my daughter without asking what was in it for him. Diane's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. Someone who saw a problem, assessed the situation, and took appropriate action without waiting for someone to tell him what to do? Yes, Major. That's exactly what this operation requires. Victor suddenly understood the temperature in the room. Maxwell had his own candidates, probably people who'd scratch his back if he scratched theirs. Victor's unexpected addition upset carefully laid plans. You'll undergo additional screening, Diane continued. Psych eval, advanced security clearance, the works. But I want you on this team, Sergeant. The official briefing starts in 3 weeks. Questions? No, ma'am. Dismissed. Victor stood, saluted, and made it exactly 2 steps toward the door before Maxwell's voice stopped him. "Sergeant." A word. Diane had already left. Victor turned back to face the major, who'd stood and was buttoning his jacket with deliberate precision. "You got lucky with the kid," Maxwell said quietly. "Don't mistake luck for merit." "Wasn't aware I had, sir. This task force is critical to national security. The general may see something in you, but I don't. You're a grunt who happened to be in the right place. That doesn't make you special operations material." Victor held his gaze. "With respect, sir, my 12 years of service and 3 combat deployments might disagree." Maxwell's smile was thin and cold. "Combat experience doesn't mean you understand the complexities of intelligence work. This isn't kicking down doors and shooting bad guys. This is nuanced, strategic, above your pay grade. Then I guess I'll have to learn, sir. See that you do, because if you screw this up, it won't just be your career that suffers. It'll be mine, and the general's. And I won't let some ice cream hero derail years of planning because he thinks he's earned something." Victor left the briefing room with a knot in his gut. He'd made an enemy today, and not just any enemy, one with rank, connections, and a personal grudge. In his experience, those were the most dangerous kind. Chapter 3. The Setup. 3 weeks felt like 3 months. Victor passed every screening with flying colors. Psych eval came back clean. His security clearance bumped up to levels that required its own classified paperwork, and his performance reviews suddenly got very interested eyes from very important people. But it wasn't smooth sailing. Equipment went missing during training exercises. Gear he'd personally checked and secured. Reports he'd filed got lost in the system, only to reappear with subtle alterations that made him look sloppy. Small things, deniable things, the kind of harassment that couldn't be proven but was definitely intentional. Victor knew who was behind it. Bradford Maxwell played his political games with the subtlety of a sledgehammer, but enough plausible deniability that actually proving anything was impossible. The real problem came 2 days before the official task force deployment briefing. Victor returned to his barracks after a nighttime training run to find Quentin Howell, Maxwell's right-hand man and a captain with the personality of a used car salesman, sitting on his bunk, holding Victor's personal laptop. "Evening, Sergeant," Howell said, not bothering to stand. "Hope you don't mind. I was just conducting a routine security check." Victor's blood pressure spiked. "That requires authorization, sir." "Which I have." Howell held up a paper, signed by Major Maxwell himself. "We take security very seriously for this operation. Can't have any loose ends. Find anything interesting?" Victor kept his voice level, but his mind raced. There was nothing on that laptop that could hurt him. He wasn't stupid enough to keep anything sensitive on personal equipment, but the invasion of privacy, the clear message that Maxwell could reach into any part of his life, was unmistakable. "Nothing yet." Howell closed the laptop with deliberate slowness. "But you know how these things go. Sometimes things turn up in the most unexpected places. Downloaded files, suspicious communications, the kind of thing that would be really unfortunate right before a major deployment." The threat was clear as day. If you're going to plan something, Captain, you might want to be more subtle about the threat. Howell's smile was reptilian. "Plan something? Sergeant, I'm shocked you'd suggest such a thing. I'm just doing my job, making sure everyone on this task force is exactly who they say they are." He stood, still holding the laptop. "I'll return this once the analysis is complete. Should be about 48 hours, right around the time of the final briefing." After Howell left, Victor sat in the dark, thinking. This was more than harassment now. This was a setup. Maxwell wanted him off the task force, and he was willing to fabricate evidence to make it happen. The question was, how far would they go? He pulled out his phone, his personal, encrypted phone that the Army didn't know about, and made a call. "Eugene." Victor kept his voice low. "It's Wolf. I need a favor. Big one." Eugene Wells had been Victor's team leader in Afghanistan, before an injury sent him stateside and eventually into the private sector. Now he ran a small security consulting firm that catered to people who needed problems solved discreetly. "Wolf. Been a while. What's cooking?" "Someone's trying to frame me. Military. High level. I need insurance." There was a pause. You in real trouble or just paranoid? They took my laptop. Promised to find something incriminating in 48 hours. Eugene whistled. That's not subtle. All right, what do you need? Background on Major Bradford Maxwell. Everything. Financial records, communications, dirt. If he's coming after me, he's got vulnerabilities. I need to find them. That's gonna cost. I've got savings. This isn't about money, brother. You're talking about investigating a field-grade officer. If this goes sideways, we're both screwed. If I don't do this, I'm screwed anyway. And I didn't survive 3 tours to get taken down by some political hack with daddy issues. Eugene laughed. There's the wolf I remember. All right, give me 36 hours. I'll see what I can dig up. Victor ended the call and lay back on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. He'd played defense long enough. Time to go on offense. Act 2, The Trap Springs. Chapter 4, False Evidence. The briefing room was packed with the task force. 12 operators, all hand-selected, all looking at Victor like he'd just tracked dog shit across a white carpet. Bradford Maxwell stood at the podium, his expression grave. As you're all aware, security is paramount for this operation, which is why I'm deeply troubled by what our screening process uncovered. Victor's gut clenched. Here it comes. Maxwell clicked a remote, and the projection screen lit up with what looked like classified documents, file headers, security stamps, the whole 9 yards. These documents were found on Sergeant Wolf's personal laptop. Classified operational plans, unit deployments, names of covert personnel. Mutters rippled through the room. Victor felt eyes boring into him from every direction. Victor started. The evidence is conclusive, Maxwell continued, his voice carrying just the right note of disappointed authority. The metadata shows these files were accessed and stored over the past 3 weeks. The same period Sergeant Wolf was undergoing screening for this task force. Diane Thomas sat at the corner of the table, her expression unreadable. Victor looked directly at her. General, this is fabricated. I never accessed those files. I don't even have clearance for half of them. Which makes it even more concerning, Maxwell said smoothly. It suggests either a catastrophic breach of operational security or he paused for effect. Deliberate espionage. The room erupted. Espionage. The word hung in the air like poison gas. Military prison at Leavenworth kind of accusations. Career-ending, life-destroying accusations. Diane held up a hand, and the room fell silent. Major Maxwell, these are serious charges. What's your recommendation? Immediate detention pending a full investigation. Removal from the task force. Possible court-martial. Victor's mind raced. This was worse than he'd anticipated. Maxwell wasn't just trying to get him kicked off the team. He was trying to destroy him completely. The planted evidence, the espionage angle, the public humiliation. This was scorched earth. General Thomas, Victor said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. I request permission to speak. Diane nodded. Go ahead, Sergeant. 3 weeks ago, Captain Howell confiscated my laptop for what he called a routine security check. He had it for 48 hours before this briefing. That's a 48-hour window where anyone could have planted these files. That's a serious accusation, Maxwell said, but Victor caught the flicker of concern in his eyes. It's the truth, sir, and I can prove it. That was a bluff. Victor had no proof yet, but he needed to buy time. Diane leaned forward. Prove it how? The laptop has built-in diagnostics. Access logs, system timestamps, hardware identifiers. If those files were planted, the forensic evidence will show exactly when they were added and from what source. Maxwell's expression tightened. The files could have been backdated. Then let's get CID involved. Victor turned to Diane. Criminal Investigation Division has cyber forensics experts. Real ones. Let them examine everything. My laptop, my service records, my communications. If I'm guilty, I'll accept whatever punishment comes. But if I'm innocent, he looked directly at Maxwell. Then someone went to a lot of trouble to frame me. The room was silent. Diane drummed her fingers on the table, a habit Victor had noticed during their first meeting. It meant she was thinking, calculating odds, gaming out scenarios. Major Maxwell, she said finally. You're certain these files came from Sergeant Wolf's laptop? Yes, ma'am. Chain of custody was maintained throughout the screening process. Then you won't mind if CID examines both the laptop and your screening procedures? Maxwell's jaw clenched. Of course not, ma'am. Good. Sergeant Wolf, you're confined to base pending investigation. No communications with anyone outside the task force. Major, you'll cooperate fully with CID. This briefing is postponed until we get to the bottom of this. As the room emptied, Victor caught Diane's eye. She gave him a nearly imperceptible nod. Not quite trust, but not quite condemnation either. A general willing to wait for evidence before passing judgment. It was more than he could have hoped for, and less than he needed. Chapter 5, Digging Deeper. 3 days in lockdown gave Victor a lot of time to think. His barracks room became a cage. MPs posted outside like he was some kind of terrorist. The CID investigation moved at the pace of continental drift, and every hour that passed was another hour Maxwell could use to solidify his story, destroy evidence, or create new problems. But Victor hadn't been idle. Eugene Wells was good, better than good. The thumb drive that had been accidentally delivered to Victor's room, hidden in a care package from his sister, contained enough information to bury Maxwell 3 times over. Financial records showing payments from foreign defense contractors. Email correspondence that violated operational security protocols. And, most damning, a pattern of personnel recommendations that all seemed designed to benefit Maxwell's career trajectory while marginalizing anyone he saw as competition. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. This was evidence of corruption and misconduct, sure, but didn't directly prove Maxwell had planted the files on Victor's laptop. Victor needed something more, a smoking gun that tied Maxwell directly to the frame job. The answer came from an unexpected source. Private Jeffrey McNeil showed up at Victor's door on the 4th night, looking like he was about to puke. The MP on duty knew Jeffrey. They were in the same unit, and let him through for approved visitation. Sergeant Wolf, Jeffrey said, his voice shaking. I need to tell you something. Victor gestured him inside. Talk. It's about your laptop. I was there when Captain Howell had it. Victor's attention sharpened. What did you see? I was running errands for Major Maxwell, filing paperwork, delivering messages, that kind of grunt work. 3 nights ago, I went to the Major's office to drop off some reports. The door was closed, but I heard voices inside. Captain Howell and someone else. They were talking about planting files. You heard them discuss planting files on my laptop? Jeffrey nodded miserably. Howell was saying something about how the metadata would be clean, how CID wouldn't find anything suspicious. The other voice, I couldn't tell who it was, but it sounded like they were giving instructions. Technical stuff. File structures, access codes. Why are you telling me this now? Because it's wrong, Sergeant. I've seen your record. You're a good soldier. What they're doing. Jeffrey shook his head. I can't be part of it, even if it costs me my career. Victor studied the young private. Scared but sincere. This was exactly what he needed, a witness. But also exactly what would get Jeffrey destroyed if Maxwell found out. Can you testify to CD? I don't know. My word against a major and a captain? Who's going to believe me? I will. And I think General Thomas will too. Victor pulled out his encrypted phone. I need you to write down everything you heard. Every word, every detail. And then we need to get you somewhere safe until this plays out. Safe? Sergeant, where am I going to be safe from a major? Victor smiled grimly. Leave that to me. Chapter 6, The General's Decision. The CID investigation concluded on day 7 with findings that were simultaneously vindicating and infuriating. The forensic team determined that yes, classified files had been on Victor's laptop, but the metadata showed they'd been added during the 48-hour period when Captain Howell had possession of the device. Moreover, the access signatures didn't match Victor's typical usage patterns, different typing speeds, different application preferences, different network access points. In short, someone had planted the files, and that someone had access to Victor's laptop while it was in official custody. The problem was proving who. Howell denied everything. Maxwell expressed shock and disappointment that his trusted aide might be involved. And without direct evidence tying them to the plant, CID couldn't make charges stick beyond security protocol violations that would result in reprimands, not court-martials. Victor sat across from Diane Thomas in her private office, the weight of 7 days' confinement and stress pressing down on his shoulders like a rucksack full of rocks. "You were right," Diane said without preamble. "Someone tried to frame you. CID is reasonably certain it was Captain Howell, though they can't definitively prove it was done on orders from Major Maxwell." "But you know it was," Victor said. Diane's expression was carefully neutral. "What I know and what I can prove are two different things, Sergeant. This is the military. We operate on evidence and chain of command. My personal suspicions don't count for much without hard proof. I have proof." Victor pulled out the thumb drive Eugene had sent. "Financial irregularities, communications that violate security protocols, a pattern of misconduct going back years. It's all here." Diane took the drive, studying it like it might explode. "Where did you get this?" "Does it matter?" "It does if I'm going to use it. Illegally obtained evidence isn't illegal if it was obtained by a private citizen conducting research. I have a friend in the private sector, former military. He did some digging." Victor leaned forward. "General, Maxwell tried to destroy me to protect his position. How many other people has he done this to? How many other soldiers got screwed because they stood in his way?" Diane was quiet for a long moment, then inserted the thumb drive into her computer. Her eyes flickered across the screen, reading fast, her expression darkening with each passing second. "This is damning," she said finally. "It's enough to open an investigation. It's enough to end his career." Diane ejected the drive and handed it back. "But it doesn't solve our immediate problem. The task force deployment is scheduled for next week. I need an operations officer I can trust. Not Maxwell. Definitely not Maxwell." Diane stood, pacing to the window that overlooked the parade ground. "I'm removing him from the task force effective immediately. Captain Howell as well. But that leaves me with a gap in leadership at a critical time." Victor sensed where this was going, but stayed silent. "Your record is exceptional, Sergeant Wolf. 3 tours, multiple commendations, tactical expertise that's earned praise from every commanding officer you've served under. The only thing that's held you back from further advancement is your tendency to," she smiled slightly, color outside the lines. "Some situations require creative solutions, ma'am." "Agreed. Which is why I'm offering you a field commission. Lieutenant Wolf has a nice ring to it. You'd serve as my second-in-command on this task force. It's a battlefield promotion, subject to review after the operation, but it comes with full authority and responsibility." Victor's heart hammered. This was more than vindication. This was opportunity. "I accept, ma'am." "Good, because we deploy in 6 days, and I need you up to speed on everything Maxwell was handling, which means 16-hour days and crash courses in operational planning that would make your ranger training look like a vacation." "Understood, ma'am." Diane extended her hand. "Welcome to the team, Lieutenant. Don't make me regret this." Victor shook her hand, feeling the weight of what came next settling on his shoulders. Maxwell was out, but he wasn't down. And men like Bradford Maxwell didn't take defeat gracefully. Act 3, Reckoning. Chapter 7, Maxwell's Gambit. Victor underestimated how vindictive a cornered officer could be. The official story was that Major Maxwell had been reassigned to a logistics position in Germany, pending review of security protocol violations. A lateral move that looked like a routine rotation on paper, but everyone knew was a demotion disguised as bureaucratic shuffling. Captain Howell was similarly reassigned to a desk job at Fort Hood, about as far from special operations as you could get without leaving the military entirely. They should have been grateful. Court-martial would have ended their careers in disgrace and possibly put them in Leavenworth. Instead, they got plausible deniability and a chance to rebuild elsewhere. But Bradford Maxwell wasn't the grateful type. The first indication something was wrong came 3 days before deployment. Victor was in the task force ready room, reviewing operational plans with the team, when his phone buzzed with a message from Eugene Wells. "Call me. Now." Secure line. Victor excused himself and found an empty conference room. "What's wrong?" "Your boy Maxwell isn't going quietly." My contacts in the contracting world just flagged some concerning chatter. Seems someone's been shopping information about your task force to interested parties. Victor's blood went cold. Shopping how? Details about the operation. Personnel lists. Deployment schedules. The kind of information that could get people killed if it reaches the wrong ears. And word is, it's coming from someone with recent access to operational planning. Maxwell. That'd be my guess. He can't get you directly anymore, so he's going scorched earth. If your mission fails, if people die, it undermines General Thomas and destroys your credibility. 2 birds, 1 treasonous stone. Can you prove it? Not yet, but I'm working on it. In the meantime, you need to assume your entire operational plan is compromised. Whatever you're planning, change it. Routes, timelines, everything. Victor's mind raced through the implications. They were heading to Cambodia, a joint operation with local forces to disrupt a human trafficking network that was using old Vietnam-era tunnels to move people across borders. The mission was complex enough without assuming the enemy knew they were coming. I need everything you can get me on Maxwell's communications, Victor said. Financial transactions, phone records, email, anything that shows he's passing information. That's going to take time we might not have. Then work fast, because if he's selling out American soldiers, I'm going to make sure he pays for it. Victor returned to the ready room and pulled Diane aside. We have a problem. 20 minutes later, the entire operation was on hold while Diane made calls to people whose names were probably classified. The task force sat in confused silence, watching their brand new LT and the general have heated conversations behind closed doors. When Diane finally emerged, her expression was granite. We're moving the deployment up. We leave tonight. Everything we discussed here, routes, schedules, objectives, is now obsolete. I'll brief the new plan on the plane. General, one of the operators asked, what's going on? Operational security has been compromised. We're adapting. Pack your gear. Wheels up at 2,300 hours. As the team scrambled to prepare, Victor caught Diane's eye. She jerked her head toward her office, and he followed. Your friend Eugene came through fast, she said, closing the door. I made some calls. NSA has been monitoring Maxwell's communications as part of the investigation. They flagged 3 encrypted emails sent to an IP address in Macau. Content suggests detailed operational intelligence being sold to a Chinese national with ties to trafficking networks. Treason, yes, but we can't arrest him yet without tipping our hand. He thinks he's safe, thinks his buyers are the only ones who know. We need to let him believe that until we have everything we need. And in the meantime, we run a different operation. One Maxwell doesn't know about. And when we succeed, when we prove his information was wrong and his betrayal was pointless, then we bring the hammer down. Victor smiled grimly. I like the way you think, General. Chapter 8. The Cambodia Operation. The mission went sideways exactly like every good mission does. Fast, violent, and in ways the intelligence briefing never predicted. Victor's team hit the tunnels 3 hours before dawn, moving through Cambodian jungle with the silence of ghosts. The original plan had been to approach from the east and breach through a known entrance. Instead, they came from the north, using coordinates Diane had gotten from CIA asset that Maxwell never knew existed. The trafficking network was bigger than anticipated. Not just a few smugglers using old Viet Song tunnels, but a full operation, armed guards, surveillance systems, and infrastructure that spoke to serious funding. The kind of operation that required protection, both local and international. They hit hard and fast. Flashbangs and breaching charges, then controlled chaos as Victor's team swept through the underground complex. Traffickers tried to fight back, but they were criminals, not soldiers. 3 minutes, and the entrance was secured. What they found inside turned Victor's stomach. 42 people, men, women, children, locked in makeshift cells, some for weeks based on their condition. Most were Southeast Asian, but a handful were European and American, all destined for labor camps or worse. Jesus Christ, one of Victor's operators muttered, staring at the cages. Get them out, Victor ordered. Medical evac on the way. I want everyone processed and identified. While his team worked on the extraction, Victor and 2 others pushed deeper into the tunnels. According to the intelligence, there was a command center somewhere in this warren, the administrative heart of the operation. Records, communications, names of people higher up the chain. They found it in the deepest section, behind a reinforced steel door that took 3 breaching charges to open. Inside was a room that looked more like a corporate office than a smuggler's den. Computers, file cabinets, satellite communications equipment. And sitting at the desk, very calmly pointing a pistol at them, was a Chinese national named Chen Wei, who Diane's intelligence had identified as Maxwell's buyer. "Lieutenant Wolf," Chen said in perfect English. "I was told you'd be coming from the east. Change of plans." Clearly, Chen's gun didn't waver. "I paid good money for that information. I'm disappointed it was incorrect. Life's full of disappointments." "Put the gun down." "I don't think so. You see, I have a problem. If I surrender, I spend the rest of my life in a Chinese prison, assuming Beijing doesn't just execute me quietly. If I shoot you and escape, I might have a chance. You'll never make it past my team. Perhaps, but you'll be dead either way." Chen's smile was cold. "Your Major Maxwell assured me your operation was predictable. He was wrong. I wonder what else he was wrong about." Victor's mind raced through scenarios. Chen was 7 feet away, pistol aimed at Victor's center mass. 2 other operators behind Victor, flanking the door. Any sudden move, and Chen would fire. But Chen couldn't possibly escape. Even if he killed all 3 of them, the tunnels were full of American soldiers and Cambodian police. This was a dead man talking, trying to take someone down with him. "Maxwell sold you out," Victor said. "You know that, right? The operation was compromised because we knew he was selling information. You were bait. We wanted to catch you and everyone you work with." Chen's expression flickered. "Lying won't save you." "Not lying. Check your encrypted communications. The NSA has been reading every message for the past week. They know your real name, your operations in Macau, your connections to the Ministry of State Security. You're burned, Chen. Maxwell burned you when he got greedy." For a fraction of a second, Chen's eyes shifted toward the computer on his desk, the instinctive glance of a man wanting to verify a claim. It was all the opening Victor needed. He moved fast, dropping and rolling left as his operators opened fire. Chen's pistol barked twice, rounds punching into the wall where Victor had been standing. Then Chen was down, 3 bullets center mass, dead before he hit the floor. Victor stood, heart pounding, ears ringing. "Secure the room. I want every piece of data pulled from those computers." They found it all. Names, payment records, trafficking routes. And buried in the encrypted communications. Every message Maxwell had sent, every piece of intelligence he'd sold, every bit of blood money he'd received in exchange for betraying his country. It was enough to bury him forever. Chapter 9. Checkmate. Bradford Maxwell was arrested at Frankfurt Airport, trying to board a flight to Dubai with a fake passport and $200,000 in cash. The FBI had been waiting for him, tipped off by NSA intercepts and the evidence Victor's team had recovered in Cambodia. The court-martial was swift and brutal. Military justice doesn't play games with treason. Maxwell tried to claim he was acting on orders, that he thought he was part of an authorized intelligence operation, but the evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, communications, testimony from Chen Wei's surviving associates who'd been picked up in coordinated raids across Southeast Asia. He got 20 years in Leavenworth, dishonorable discharge, and every cent of his pension stripped. His father, a retired 2-star general who'd spent his career building the family name, released a statement disowning his son entirely. Quentin Howell, faced with evidence of his participation in both the frame job and knowledge of Maxwell's treason, took a plea deal. 5 years, testifying against Maxwell, dishonorable discharge. He was already in Leavenworth, learning what happened to former officers in military prison. Victor stood on the parade ground at Fort Bragg, the North Carolina sun beating down as General Diane Thomas pinned silver bars on his collar. A full promotion to first lieutenant, no longer battlefield temporary, but permanent and earned. Your service to this nation continues to exceed expectations, Diane said formally, for the benefit of the assembled soldiers and brass watching the ceremony. Then, quieter, just for him. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for trusting me back, ma'am. Not many soldiers would have fought back the way you did. Most would have accepted the frame, taken the discharge, moved on. Respectfully, ma'am, I'm not most soldiers. Diane smiled. No, you're definitely not. After the ceremony, Victor found a moment alone near the East Gate. The same place he'd found Summer crying 3 months ago. 3 months that had changed everything. His phone buzzed. Eugene Wells saw the news. Nice work. Beer's on you when you get back stateside. Victor smiled and pocketed the phone. He'd take Eugene up on that. But first, there was work to do. The task force's mission in Cambodia had been just the beginning. They dismantled one trafficking network, but the intelligence they'd recovered pointed to 3 others. Bigger operations, deeper connections, more people who needed saving. Lieutenant Wolf? Summer's voice made him turn. She stood with her mother a few yards away, holding her stuffed elephant. Mommy says you're a hero. Victor crouched down to her level, same as he had 3 months ago. I'm just a soldier who tries to do the right thing. That's what makes someone a hero, Diane said, one hand on her daughter's shoulder. Summer wanted to give you something. A thank you. Summer held out a drawing. Stick figures done in crayon. One tall figure holding hand with a small figure, both eating ice cream cones. Above it, in careful child's handwriting, thank you for helping me. Victor took it carefully, feeling something catch in his chest. This is perfect. Thank you, Summer. Will you help more people? Summer asked. Like you helped me? Victor looked up at Diane, who nodded slightly. Then back at Summer. Yeah, that's the plan. As they walked away, Victor folded the drawing carefully and put it in his pocket. He'd frame it later, hang it somewhere he could see it when the work got hard and the missions got dark. A reminder of why this mattered. Why fighting back against people like Maxwell. Why standing up when it would be easier to stand down. Why refusing to quit even when the deck was stacked. Why all of it was worth it. He'd been tested, set up, framed, and nearly destroyed. But he'd fought back smarter, harder, and better than his enemies had planned for. In the end, that was what separated the wolves from a sheep. And Victor Wolf was definitely not a sheep. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.